What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Ripple Effect Podcast. Today we got a comedian I've been watching for a long time, the Amazing Johnathan. He's been around since, I believe, the early 80s doing comedy and, comedy slash, bless you, slash magician. Actually, that's a good question for you. Do you consider yourself a comedian who does magic or a magician who does comedy?
I've got it right in between, man. I've got it right on the line. Maybe a little I lean towards hanging out with comedians more than magicians, but yeah, I've pretty much got a 50-50 blend on that one.
Yeah, because you hang out with a lot of magicians, so I mean, you obviously relate to them and you're intrigued with their work. And what came first? Your first comedy show or your first magician act?
Probably magic. I started as a magician and didn't really get very proficient at that craft. You know, I was pretty bad at it. So I switched to comedy after I did my high school talent show, which bombed so horribly that I had to never do magic again after that night. I mean, that was the worst night of any performer. I did 6 magic tricks and 6 of them went wrong. And my parents were in the audience, all my classmates were in the audience, all my friends, everybody, my relatives. So I bombed really horribly. I actually killed a dove during that show.
Now you do it as a magic trick. Before you did it for real.
Yeah, I'm doing the same show as I did that night. You know, only I switched titles.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Well, I remember hearing the story about the bending spoon story. That well,
you heard the story? Yeah, that was.
Yeah, basically you got really good at this one trick, and then you got everybody basically convinced. And then basically just it was a lie that just downward spiraled. That
I had real psychic powers, which probably saved my ass throughout the rest of the year. You know, for high school, I was very popular after that. Everybody thought I could bend spoons for real, and they looked up to me for it. You know, as they should, because if I can bend spoons, they certainly can make their head blow up or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
People were more naive back then. This is 1976. Everybody was believing in Uri Geller and the spoon bending phenomenon, and so, you know, I just jumped on that bandwagon.
Yeah. So, well, you obviously, I think they're both really hard to do. I think stand-up comedy, I mean, you basically combine 2 things that are super hard to do, and that's, I mean, to be a magician, obviously, you really have to. Everybody in the audience has to basically fall for it, you know, for it to work. And to be a comedy, I mean, you basically can only, it's not like writing a book or writing a song or whatever where you can kind of do it on your own. You basically practice while you're on stage, right? Because you basically, do you write your stuff basically on stage, most of it?
I ad-lib a lot on stage, but that didn't come till years and years later when I was comfortable enough and sharp enough to be able to ad-lib, you know. There's not a lot of comics who can ad-lib a lot during their show. I mean, a lot of stuff that looks ad-lib is also planned, so you know the audience doesn't know which is which. You know, if you can make it look fresh every single time you go out there, that's the whole trick to longevity. You know, you gotta magic can be learned, but the talking part is what either you got it or you don't. So. Yeah, I mean, I fell into the right category for comedy because I pretty much had a sense of humor in high school, but I developed it throughout the years, you know, to the point where now nobody can say anything I don't have an answer for. Nobody. That comes mainly from doing a strip club up in Alaska and having to go on between the girls, you know, and then people hating me and booing me and. You know, my intro was, "Do you want to see some titties?" And then, yeah, but first here's a magician. So I had to follow that, you know.
Yeah.
So I got real good real fast. Yeah, I got real good real fast up in Alaska, handling people yelling at me.
Oh yeah, hecklers is it's one of those things that comedians do such a good job handling, and it's just like, you know, I'm sure it's really hard to not just get upset and you know, to try to come up with a creative line, because the one thing you always hear about comedians is they say, like, you can't let the heckler win, because then it ruins the show. Like you almost can't let them get away with it, right? You have to, you know, you have to be able to have a line to shut them up or something, because then you kind of lose the crowd a little bit.
Oh yeah, if you lose the crowd to a heckler, you're done. You're right. So I would, anyone's thinking of doing stand-up comedy, I would have at least 2 or 3 good lines in your arsenal before you step foot on that stage, because yeah, after 2 or 3 heckler lines, if he's still doing it, you can have him thrown out. You know, but you need to put him in his place.
Yeah, but there's definitely some comedy clubs that are better at that than others. You hear about ones that just kind of, you know, let hecklers go at the comedians, and there's just no, you know, there's no real control. And that's hard, man, because I mean, you're basically going all over the U.S. or sometimes, you know, a lot of comedians go to obviously England and Europe and stuff like that, or Australia. And the thing about that is that you're basically, you know, I'm guessing you use a similar act, and basically you're meeting all these people that have different cultures, different backgrounds, different sense of humors, and you're hoping that the same thing works for everybody. And that has to be hard, no?
Good heckler line's universal. If they understand English, they should understand your heckler line. I mean, well, I just remember the worst thing is when somebody says something to you and the rest of the audience doesn't hear them. And so it looks like you're picking on the guy when they don't, you know, some guy can like yell, just say boring. That's the worst thing you can hear. If somebody says boring, like in that tone, boring, that's the worst. And that's the most insulted you could ever be by a heckler. But see, I had that happen and nobody could hear him say it but me. And he was in the front row and I looked like an idiot stopping the show and dealing with this guy. So I actually had to physically get up myself, grab him and throw him out of the club, you know. I had a little bit that I did with a violin, and I took the violin bow. I remember after I warned him 2 or 3 times, I took it and I actually slapped his face with it, man. I put it on his cheek. I said, can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear, yeah.
Okay, I just told him, I said, shut the fuck up. And I whipped him right in the face with the violin bow, which sounds extreme and looks extreme to the audience, but you know, but he was saying all kinds of shit that only I could hear, you know. So I looked like a bully, but I had to get him out.
Yeah.
I whipped him in the face and threw him out. I picked him up by the scruff of his neck, and you got to learn how to do the bum's rush, you know, by the back of the pants and by the collar, and then you run him out the back door and throw him out in the parking lot, you know. And then I had to come back and explain what happened, what he was saying to me, and then they understood. But yeah, make sure they're on your side, because I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where somebody dealt with somebody in the audience like that, and they didn't have the audience on their side, so that he got booed when he came back on. You know, you got to make sure that they know what he did.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I was just I went to go see Tommy Segura not too long ago, and same thing. They had this drunk lady that was, you know, kind of just saying things, and same type of idea where we couldn't really hear what she was saying, and because of it, it kind of sounded like he was a little bit of you know, like he was picking on her, until like she got louder. Then you're like, holy shit, this chick is drunk and she's being belligerent. And so yeah, that has to be hard, because again, like you said, you have to the crowd. I mean, and it's hard because you look at it, it's so easy to get distracted, I'm sure, when you're up there, you know, and to focus on one person who either isn't paying attention or is talking or whatever. So and when all eyes are on you, you lose your focus, and I'm sure that, you know, that obviously it's hard to get back in that zone. And when you're up. Yeah,
you're right. It's hard to get back. When they interrupt your show, not so much my show because it's split up into little bits, but if you're doing a real important piece that requires setup and all that stuff, yeah, if somebody interrupts you, it's done. You know, it's took all the air out of your balloon. You know.
Now, who did you grow up looking up to? Were your influences people you really looked up to? Were they more magicians, or were they more comedians, or a little bit of both?
Probably first magicians, you know, since I started doing magic first. I think like Doug Henning but I mean, Steve Martin was my role model as far as what to do with comedy and magic, because he did that too. He did comedy and magic, and I watched him, and that's what got me, you know, excited about doing it. When I did start doing it, I said I want to be like Steve Martin, you know. Yeah,
and yeah, I think it's it's an art form that comedy is one of those art forms that doesn't get enough credit. Like on this show, I get a lot of filmmakers. I have authors. I mean, anybody that does any type of art form that I find interesting, that I'm a fan of, I try to invite them on, and I get, I try to get comedians on too. And it's the same thing. Like, I see comedy as an art, and people don't really see the writing part of it, and there's a flow to it, the punchlines and all this stuff. And the one thing, on that note, one thing you hear a lot about, I hear with other comedians talk about, is how when you first get in comedy, people that you look up to, you end up adopting their style until you find your own style. Did you do that?
Yeah, I did. I did it with Harry Anderson, actually. I started street performing in San Francisco, and that's how I started doing my shows and getting them really well. With comedy, I added comedy out on the street. He was out there and he was getting 200-300 people standing out around him. I was getting like maybe 10. And so I watched him, and he knew how to do the comedy. And I said, I better start adding some comedy to the show, because the magic's not holding them. They got shopping to do. They're not there to see you. So as soon as I started, I stole Harry's entire act, basically. I even wore glasses when I didn't need them, because he wore glasses. Yeah, I did that. I adopted Harry's style and a lot of his jokes. And throughout the next year or two, I was very scared that he was going to come and bust me on the street with his stuff, but he never did. By the time he did get around to seeing my show, I had already dropped everything that was anything to do with Harry. But yeah, he is the guy I modeled the show after,
Yeah. And what else was I gonna? Oh, and what about the cocaine stories? Is there any truth to you being quite the partier back? Well, I'm sure living in Vegas. If for listeners who don't know, you got a good deal with what was the Golden Nugget, and then you spend years and years in Vegas doing a show, and they took care of you. What I hear, it's they obviously, it's Vegas. I'm guessing they should take care of you. They have the money to take care of their guys. So was that the time when you were partying a lot?
Oh, no, the cocaine thing was way before that. But it was most of my career, I would say. I mean, when I started out on the streets, I was maybe 19 years old. But at that time, I'd already done most of the drugs that there were to do. But I continued on when we used to do sugar cubes. People would sell them on the street, and most of the time they weren't real, but sugar cube acid, when it was real, that enabled me to write a lot of material and get my head in the right place. And I did drugs throughout. Sam Kinison, someone told me that if I ever bumped into Sam Kinison, that we both would spontaneously combust. And when I did bump into Sam, I told him that, and he knew my legend. Everybody knows my legend of partying, yeah. So there definitely was a lot of cocaine use, and then I stopped doing that. And then the Vegas thing happened years after that. But I still continue to do drugs if I want to smoke weed, or if I need to stay up, I'll do speed. I'm not afraid of people knowing I do drugs at all, because it's been part of my makeup for the past 25 years. So yeah.
Well, the funny thing about
drugs are not the answer. Drugs is the question, and the answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, there probably is some truth to the fact that it sparks creativity. I mean, you look at a lot of people, writers would smoke a lot. You look at journalists back in the day that all had a cigarette hanging from their mouths. You had, I can't even think of his name right now, but Thompson, Thompson S, whatever his name is. Now I'm having a brain fart. Yeah, he did. I believe he did ayahuasca. Bill Hicks did ayahuasca, or did mess around with psychedelic drugs and stuff like that. So I mean, I think there probably is a link to something about doing drugs and being creative, because you look at it, I think it's very easy for us to become these machines where we go to work, we see the same surroundings, we see the same people, we do the same routine, and then there's something about doing, maybe possibly doing a drug that kind of takes you out of that comfort zone and lets you see things from different perspectives. And is that kind of what you got from it?
Yeah, I did get that from it, but then I put it away. I mean, as far as psychedelics go, a lot of people continue on doing them for recreation, and they just burn out their brains. But I did what I needed to do for a year or two, and experimented with mescaline and peyote and all these expanding drugs, and just was the nature of the beast back in the 70s too. I mean, a lot of people were doing that, and back then you could get stuff, but I don't do it now because it would scare me to do any kind of acid or LSD now. I think I did mushrooms a few years ago, and that was quite a trip, and I decided that I don't need that stuff. So I haven't done psychedelics for years and years, since I was a kid, but I like to do like speed if I have to stay up and work. That gets me going. I'll stay up for a year or two, a day or two, and I'll write really amazing amounts of material doing that where I wouldn't have done that before. And build, don't forget, I have to build this stuff too. I can't just write material, I have to also build it because I'm a magician or a prop comic. And that helps me on that regard too. So yeah, I don't shy away from it, you know. Well, but smoking weed even to me right now is really like it's so strong, the weed nowadays, that I can't even handle that. I mean, I get all weird when I smoke really good weed. It's so good nowadays.
Yeah. I did edibles for the first time like a couple months ago, and I didn't know what the fuck I was getting myself into. I knew that it was completely different than smoking it, but when I ate it, I mean, first of all, I shouldn't have been watching Wolf of Wall Street when I ate it. I'm like, it's already a kind of psychedelic movie to begin, you know, the kind of a lot of weird moments, and I tell you, I bugged out. I'm not sure I'll do it again, but I think as an adult, it's almost like I never did a whole lot of drugs growing up, but like I feel like when I was younger, I'd probably do it more for, you know, just to have a good time, you know, than anything else. And like now, I'm almost more interested and intrigued with like DMT and psychedelic drugs, because now I feel like I would do it for like self-reflection reasons, to try to, you know, because you hear about a lot of people who do it and they, you know, almost for spiritual ways of kind of looking in the mirror and kind of like, you know, help with self-reflection, kind of figure out who you are and all. I mean, I don't know if it's just meditation or what, but it seems like, you know, I'm kind of really curious with that type of stuff, and also with creativity.
You should do it. I mean, if you haven't found out what you need to find out, continue doing it until you do. Edibles is a real good way to do it. It's safe. I use it now. I use edibles all the time because of my sickness, because I get nauseous really, really quick because of my heart condition. And it really helps me get over thinking about the pain that I'm in, you know. It's really good for pain. It puts your whole, jumps track, you know, you jump track. It derails the whole pain thing. So I do edibles too a lot, and I like doing them. You're right, they're very strong. Don't think it's like smoking weed, because it isn't.
Yeah, no, it's not. Well, that's one of those things where that's why the whole marijuana thing kind of bothers me. The idea that people look at it like it's this, you know, like it's equivalent to shooting up heroin, when really it's like alcohol kills more people, has worse side effects, way more harmful for you, has no real health benefits from it, but yet you can go to any bar or store and buy it, and yet there's people with medical conditions. Like, I don't know if you watched that Dr. Sanjay Gupta special they had on CNN, and it was just like, you see this little girl who has seizures, and you know, she found, you know, they found out that this type of weed would make her feel better and deal with this, and for some reason, you know, they can't get it because of the state she's in, and it's something that could be helpful to somebody. And because of this stupid, you know, Stone Age law that they look at marijuana like it's a drug, you know, people can't get to it. And I think that, you know, when you know, in your case too with your condition, the fact that it helps, and I don't know, well, you live in Vegas. What's the rules in Vegas? Is it decriminalized in Vegas?
Yeah, it's decriminalized here, and we have dispensaries that bring over whatever. I mean, they bring over a whole shopping mart, you know, of cookies and pens, and you know, the pens are good, you know. Yeah, it's going to be decriminalized everywhere, I think, you know. But now if you're driving on edibles, that can be not good. I don't think that people should drive when they're doing edibles, because like you said, it's so strong that it could cause your reaction time to slow down a little bit. So I mean, smoking is one thing, but doing edibles and driving, that's a whole nother ball game, you know. Oh, yeah. I get scared to get in the car if I'm doing edibles and they're working, you know. Sometimes I'll do edibles and it'll be like a really heavy duty thing, but most of the times it just is a certain level, you know?
Yeah. Well, speaking of cars, you still got that car collection of yours? Because you
have 25 classic cars. I had 27. I sold 2 of them. Now I'm trying to sell some off, you know, I'm trying to get rid of everything I own, actually. So there's a lot of good bargains here in the Amazing Johnathan store. I have 25 cars I want to sell. Maybe I'll keep 5 of them. But yeah, I went through a whole phase where I was making so much money in Las Vegas that I had to spend it on something, and I was just working and putting the checks in the bank and working and putting the. So I said, I'm going to have some fun, and I went out, and every time there was an auction in town, I'd come home with 2 or 3 cars, and so now I'm stuck with all these cars. But it was pretty fun over the years to have all these cars,
Yeah, that's pretty badass. Yeah, did you buy some cars that probably remind you of these cars you grew up with and you loved, or is that usually the case?
At first, I did the old nostalgia thing. I was never a car guy, I never was really into. No, I wasn't a car guy at all. Hi, it's my cat. So the first car I bought was for my ex-wife, and that was a 1956 Porsche Speedster, and it was a convertible, red convertible, and I bought that for her and had it in the driveway, gift wrapped, ready. And that's the day that she decided to divorce me. She didn't know I had the car waiting for her.
Wow.
And she wanted a divorce. She told me on the way back from Vegas when we lived. I have a house in LA too, so I told her that I had don't do this, don't do this. I have a nice gift for you, and she left me that day, so she never got the car, and I got stuck with it, and I was driving it around, and people were looking at it, and I went, hey, this is kind of cool, having people look at your car all the time. I'd come out of a store, there'd be a crowd of people around the car looking at it, and I kind of liked that, so that's what hooked me on buying another car, which was the GTO, which my sister's boyfriend had when I was little, and he was so cool, like Fonzie. So I said, I want that car. So I got a GTO, and then that started the bug,
Yeah. So it's just like a mini Jay Leno garage.
It is. Yeah. He's taken a lifetime to collect cars. He always was a car guy. I got these cars within 10 years. I'm talking 27 cars I bought in 10 years.
Yeah.
Jay wants to look at my collection. We've never got around to it, but he always says he wants to see my collection.
Oh, his collection is fucking crazy. He has cars that you have to read a manual to learn how to start. It's just, you wind up, and he really knows his stuff. It's I'll tell you, man. You would think that just watching him on his show and his stand up, you wouldn't. It's amazing how knowledgeable he is with these older cars and all the different brands.
He can tear them apart and fix them. I don't know the first thing about cars. Really, I probably know as much as like a girl who doesn't know anything about cars. I should specify that.
Well,
yeah.
So for the listeners who aren't familiar, because I want to talk about this a little bit before I let you go, your heart condition. Yeah, I was telling you before we started recording about how I saw you at the Hukilau in Chicopee at a local comedy club, and you were talking about your heart condition, how you're on your farewell tour, and because you're such a joker, and then you're always kind of messing around with blood and cutting yourself. Well,
folks, that's what it's all about.
Well, it is about, yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Life's too short, man, and I think that it's important to laugh, and that's why I love comedy, because I've never had a divorce, but I had a pretty hard breakup when I was younger, and kind of my whole life felt like it was over. And one thing that I really turned to, and that's really when I was always a big music guy, and music would always be my growing up I was a musician, and I'm still write music and all this stuff, and but comedy, one thing I loved about comedy is that it made me laugh. And even though I could relate with music, comedy made me laugh. No matter how depressed I was, I could go watch a stand-up show or watch a special on TV, and it made me laugh. And it let me forget about all my issues and all my personal stuff. And that's why comedy always has a soft spot in my heart, just because I think that it does that to a lot of people that need it. Unfortunately, we live in the world where most of us work a crappy job, we hate, and then we go to these shows and we get to forget about it for a little bit. So, I really appreciate the stuff you guys do.
Well, thank you. A lot of people come up to me and say that when they were sick, they watched my show and it helped pull them through. And a lot of people had cancer. I've heard that from them. I heard that Bill Hicks, the last time he laughed, was watching my special on TV when he was sick, and hearing that meant a lot to me. And yeah, it does pull a lot of people through some hard times. And I would like to laugh. I'm not depressed about what's happening to me, because, like I told you, I've lived a a charmed life. Everything that I've ever wanted, I've got, and so I can't complain that my life is ending. But I'm 50. What am I? 55 years old now. 56 years old, and nobody thought I would live to be this long. 56 the way I lived. Yeah, 57 next month. So yeah, I'm not complaining about it. I don't get depressed about it because, like I said, there's nothing on my bucket list. Now that I'm retired, I'm trying to think of what I'm going to do, and it's like I'm drawing a blank. So it's like maybe I've done everything that I wanted to do, and people go, "Oh, you're not setting your sights high enough," but I've achieved quite a bit with a stupid magic show. I've gotten a lot of wear and tear out of that act, and made a lot of people write me hundreds of letters now. Every week I get hundreds of letters from people who say thank you for doing what you did and telling me what it meant to them. So yeah, it makes you feel good. Everybody likes to be patted on the back and know that what they've done has been useful. So yeah, it's been useful.
Yeah, I agree. I think that
people think I'm joking around, though. They think I'm setting them up. And when you think about it, nobody's ever really done that, fake their death and then come back again. It's not been done before, Not in the history of the world has anybody, celebrity-wise, faked their death and then popped up again maybe 10 years later, And people think that's what I'm doing because I've always talked about that, wanting to do that. And if I was going to do it, this is the time to do it.
Yeah.
So, maybe I'll see you in 10 years.
Hey, I hope so. Hey, you know what? I know when you talked about this heart condition, I mean, really, the timeline is kind of up in the air, right? You really don't know, it's like you're saying, maybe I'll see you in 10 years, but that could quite possibly be in maybe 50 years or whatever, right? It doesn't.
Oh, no, not with my condition, no.
Really?
Yeah, it's the deteriorating condition. It's cardiomyopathy. It gets worse and worse. It doesn't, it stopped for about 6 years. It stopped progressing for some reason, but now it's back again, and the wheels are turning again. So, yeah, it doesn't look like I'll be here in 6 years at all. No, I'm not hopeful about that. If it happens, fine, but who knows? I doubt it. I'm not living. Let's put it this way: getting my affairs in order is the priority.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I think, but I'll tell you, it's awesome to hear that you can honestly say you have all this free time, and it's like, well, what do I do with it now? I mean, the fact that you accomplished so much in your career. I mean, like I said in the beginning of the show, you started in '83, and you just, I remember watching you on, your Comedy Central special way back in the day, and seeing you on Letterman and stuff like that when I was real young, and it was awesome to know that you're still doing comedy and all this stuff. I mean, obviously it was sad to hear that, it was your farewell tour, but I think it's important to, obviously we never know when our time is. It's important to, to live your life. I think so much of us, it's a shitty movie, that movie In Time with Justin Timberlake. It was a stupid movie, but the one thing I think that was really intriguing about it was the fact that the concept was that everybody had basically their lifespan on their wrist, seeing the time tick backwards. And I always thought about that. I'm always like, I wonder if we had that on our arms and we could see our time tick backwards, how different we would live. Would we? That
sounds like a cool movie. What movie was that?
It's called In Time.
Yeah, I love movies. Anything to do with time travel or time like that, I love. That sounds like a cool concept.
Check it out, yeah. And then basically you could buy more time. So the rich would live forever, and the poor people would basically not. So it's a
lot of crime though. There'd been massive amounts of crime if it was like that.
Yeah. It was a really interesting concept, and it always made me wonder, like, if that happened to us, how different. Because we always say, oh, tomorrow's not promised, this and that, but how many of us actually take that in consideration? We always say that, but we always wake up, assuming that there's going to be another tomorrow, and I think that we do take that for granted, and that's why I think it's important to laugh. It's important, like you said, it's important. Comedy is important because life is too short to be too upset over everything. And I know even when you went through your divorce, I heard stories about you taking it hardly, and I think everybody does that first, like really strong heartache, and then you rebound.
Yeah, but it makes you stronger. It does make you stronger after you get over the pain. You're strong after after a divorce. First you're a miserable wreck, and then you go through so many stages when you go through a divorce. You go through I hate her, I want to kill her, to loving her and then hating her and loving her, and then that, towards the end, you should make amends with everyone. I think that anyone that you don't like, people who are estranged from their parents and stuff like that. I'm always telling these people, you better get back together with them before they die, because you're going to think about that for the rest of your life. And there's no reason, unless they're real assholes. There are reasons why, to be estranged from your family, of course. But I'm just saying, if it's over something stupid, get back together with them, because you don't know when you're going to go. And so, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, I think it takes less energy to let go of grudges than it is to hold them. So I think that when you hold grudges, that you don't realize how much weight is on you and how much it's a burden. So I think it is important to let it go. Look, I think we focus so much on the negative things in our lives. We don't focus enough on the positive things. Like, we're always talking about the things we don't have. Like, oh, I want that new iPhone. I want this. I want that. And it's just like, I'm like, look at the things you do have. And it just, I think we don't appreciate those little things as much. But we do live in like a materialistic world right now, where I think most of it.
Getting materials is fine, because that's one thing about dying I'm going to miss the most, is what the next technology is going to be. What the next iPhone will look like, what the next what's going to be around. That's what I'm going to really miss. Stuff like that. Oh yeah, and my wife. Shouldn't be reminding me every second I say something like that, because it makes you like really not want to. But no, I'll miss technology a lot, and I'll miss music a lot. Aside from the people, of course. But I'm talking about missing the next good album that's going to come out. That to me is like, that's the sad part about having to die, and keeping your memory alive. Try to leave a legacy.
Yeah. And you were saying you're friends with Pantera?
Yeah. Vinny Paul comes to almost every show he did. When I was working in Vegas, he was at every show, man. I got my first guitar right here I ever bought was a Washburn Dimebag Darrell, and I still have it, and it's not in the best shape, but I still love to pick it up and play it. And what an amazing band! I mean, those guys, Dimebag Darrell was just like, from what I hear, is one of the coolest guys, and those were. Yeah. If he's anything like his brother, he's awesome. He's awesome. Did you met them after? Vinny Paul, yeah, his show. Like I said, he comes to all my shows in Vegas when I was working. He was in my Comedy Central special. He was in. Yeah, I didn't know Dimebag, but I met him after he had died. Oh, you're right. Vinny was in the crowd, right? Yeah, Vinny was. In the special. Drummer, yeah, he was a drummer and the other brother to the lead singer. Yeah. So he was there. I didn't know anything about Pantera, because I never was into heavy metal. So all the people that are fans of mine that come see my show, I've never heard of. Unfortunately, I didn't get like a Bowie or people that I grew up with. So, but yeah, we became really good friends before I knew anything about Pantera, and he told me the whole story, and it was really sad to hear it, because hearing him tell it firsthand, Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. That's I couldn't even imagine being there and witnessing something like that. Yeah, but hey, John, I know I've taken up a lot of your time, and I really appreciate you. That's cool. It's just nothing happening with me. I'm just getting out of bed, and I got nothing planned for the day, which is really nice not to have anything planned. Yeah. And so, do you still go to L.A. or do you spend most of your time in Vegas? Yeah, I do. I still try to find time to get back there, because I love my house in LA. I've had it for 25 to 30 years. I've had it, and I have a hard time selling that house, even though I'm only there for one weekend every few months, which is ridiculous. I love going back there and having a place to go when I go back there. I have friends back there I really like. So it's a 4.5 hour drive from Vegas. I have a stretch limousine that I own. That's one of my cars, and it's all fixed up in the back. And me and my wife and my kid, we all have beds back there, and we have the internet, and we hop in the car, and we drive to LA. It's kind of relaxing and nice. It's a nice way to go. Just be on the internet, watch a movie, and you're back at your other house. Yeah, that's badass. I'm glad you're enjoying it, man. You deserve it. I mean, I think that it's awesome to hear that somebody who's you have the time and now to enjoy life, and well, it sounds like you're enjoying it anyways, because I remember hearing the story. I think it was on the What the Fuck podcast, the WTF podcast with Mark. You told the story about your father working in at a machine shop,
my parents were immigrants too, and I am. I was born in Portugal, but they came here and worked in a machine shop, and their whole lives were just saving money, working, and then raising their kids. And I always feel like they missed out a little bit on enjoying life. Like their perspectives on life was a little different, and they would always yell at me for not saving enough. And I'm like, listen, parents, I'm like, if something happens to me tomorrow, at least I can look back and say, hey, I made the most out of my time I was on this earth. And so it's when I remember hearing that story about your father, and then when he hated his job, and then when he quit, like he passed away soon after, right?
Yeah, a couple of weeks afterwards, he never got to get any retirement check ever. So he worked all his life, and then when it came time to relax, he didn't get to. A lot of people die after they retire because they don't have the same pattern. I mean, they're out of the loop. They've been doing the same things for 20 years, and then they stop doing that thing, and it affects you. It affects their heart, and they die right after they retire. It's very common.
It is very common, yeah. I've heard quite a few stories about that, and it seems. Do you think it's because when you spend that much time working and just surviving, that once that's gone, you almost realize that you had no other reason to wake up in the morning, and it kind of,
Yeah, I'm going through that right now. I mean, there's a million projects that I want to start, but I mean, yeah, I kind of wonder what my role is now. Now that I'm not the Amazing Johnathan anymore, I wonder what am I then?
Oh, you're always going to be the Amazing Johnathan.
But I think that takes a lot of stress, puts a lot of stress on you, and a lot of and that's not good for your heart. And that's one thing I don't need is stress right now. So yeah, I think it's very important. But my dad was the type who worked a job all his life and always told me don't get caught in that trap. He wasn't trying to convince me to get a regular job, and so it was just the opposite with him. He was telling me don't own material objects. It's going to tie you down. Go out there, travel around. Do your magic act on the street. He loved that. When he found out I was street performing, he loved it. I mean, that kept him going for the last few years. He loved my career, and he loved what I was doing, and the fact that I was making money doing what I loved, as opposed to sitting at a drafting table for 30 years.
It's kind of that's why it's awesome to hear people like you and to see these success stories of people who really do find something they love and can actually make a living doing it, because there are too many stories where people go to a job they hate, and then by the time they retire and they did their time and they can actually enjoy life, like you said, they end up croaking, and they don't even. So it's like you work your whole life crossing your fingers by the time you retire that your health is good enough where you can actually enjoy life a little bit, and usually that's not even the case. And so when you that's why I tell people on the show all the time, like, whatever your passion is, because I think at heart, humans, we just procrastinate. We always say we have projects we want to do, we never get around to doing it, and a lot of times we make excuses like, oh, I can never do stand-up because I don't have the time, or I could never do this because I don't have the time. And I tell people, I'm like, make the time. If that means like you have to cut corners somewhere else, if that means you have to stay up late one night, like, you're going to be way happier when you finally start a project and you start seeing it come together. And you're doing, I think we need that creativity, that use that part of your brain that's creative and imagine, and use, I think when we're kids, we all draw, we doodle, we're always imagining things when we're playing. And then as you get older, we stop doing it, and I think that,
you're right, yeah. The drawing thing that you said, it's funny because that's what I do in my spare time. I draw and I paint. But yeah, kids draw. Every kid, when you're a kid, everyone draws, and then you lose that someone tells you that it doesn't look like what you're drawing. You get discouraged and you put it away forever. Most adults, they don't ever doodle or draw anymore, and that's all you did. You colored when you were a kid, or you drew when you were creative. Instinctually you have that in you, and you kill it. People kill that instinct, when they get older, and yeah, most of the time, because you were told that you weren't good at it or something. Somebody told you that, whether it's your parents or friends, that's not, you won't be able to do that, or it's a long shot. You should go for the long shot.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I did, because I couldn't picture any other way. To be able to say yes or no and be your own boss is really half the battle.
Yeah, it is, but it's also stressful too, I'm sure, because it all kind of weighs on you too. So it's like if something doesn't go right, if something goes right, you get all the credit, but if something goes wrong, then you kind of get the blame too, right?
Kind of like God, huh?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, you're right. I'm an atheist, but yeah.
No, I'm saying that's the thing. Anything that good that happens, he gets all the credit for. Anything that bad that happens, it's nothing to do with him.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
I'm an atheist as well, but and that's the way I think. You know.
Actually that brings up a interesting topic, because I remember Christopher Hitchens when he was passing away. Yeah, are you familiar with Christopher?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
No,
and they were asking him. I think it was an interview even with Anderson Cooper, and he was saying, "Oh, do you think before you pass away, will you last second say, hey, I believe in God?" And I was wrong the whole time. And he's like, even if I do say it, he's like, don't believe me, I'm delusional, I'm this and that, And it's funny because it's like it makes you wonder like how many of us are religious because of those situations. Like, because you look at it, like I have a hard time believing like a CEO of of Halliburton, or whoever, KBR or Blackwater, is super religious compared to the people who need help, because it always seems like you turn to religion when you need help, and it makes you wonder, like, when you look back at your life right last second, because I'm an atheist, and I'm always like, when I'm like, when I know I'm closer to the finish line than I am the starting line, and is my perspective on religion going to change? But is it going to change because I actually believe in it, or is it because I'm just going to hope that I'm not wrong?
Right, he knows the difference. If there is a God, he'll know the difference, and you won't get in heaven. I'm talking. It's like agnostic people who are on the fence about it. Like, I don't know whether there is or whether there isn't. Well, you're not. Guess what? According to the religious people, you're not getting in heaven when you're agnostic. You better make a decision. It's just lazy being on the fence about it. I mean, think about reality. Could there possibly be a guy in the sky controlling all of us? No. It's not even possible. It's the stupidest idea ever. But it's just been passed down along by your parents, which makes it the perfect delivery tool. It's put in the parents' head, raise your kids to be religious, and the kids are stuck in that whole thing the rest of their lives. Yeah, I love showing people Christopher Hitchens, and showing people Richard Dawkins, and making them sit down and watch it, and they have blind faith. Even after all that, they say, yeah, I still believe I still believe it no matter what. So you can't even show these people proof and have it ring a bell in their head. That's how this caught up in it. This blind faith thing is, and it's so dangerous,
Oh, absolutely. And I think you're right. I mean, if your parents always tell you the sky's blue, since you were a kid and you grow up, you're never going to question if the sky's blue. I mean, you mold. It's funny because I'm actually going to have my girlfriend got pregnant not too long ago, and if it's mine and I keep it, I'm kidding. And but my parents were busting my balls about, oh, are you going to baptize the kid? And I'm not sure I could, because I'm like, if I'm there, I'm like, it seems fake to me. I couldn't sit there and pretend I believe all this silly, this guy, this silly costume is actually doing something, and this tap water is actually holy water, and all this stuff. I'm like, I can't take that shit seriously. And they're like, well, how about you just start them off religious and then let them go their own way? I'm like, yeah, but what if I start them off religious and they become one of those crazy religious kids that I can never talk out of it after, and then I have myself to blame for that. I'm like, I'd rather let him just, once he's old enough to decide, if he decides to be religious after, that's fine, but I'm not gonna push him either way. And I'm like, well, that's probably what happened to my parents and what happened to my grandparents. And it's like, you raise them religious, and like you said, most of the time you're gonna end up becoming religious, but it does seem like with the access to internet and stuff like that, people can do their own research. Just Noah's Ark, let's be honest, 2 of every animal on a boat. I mean, those stories are ridiculous. The fact that the stories of Jesus were only written like 100 years after Jesus, so it was all word of mouth. And I mean, like, all these holes in the stories, the New Testament, the Old Testament, I mean, like, a lot of things don't even make sense, and there's more than 4 gospels and all this stuff, and there's more than one Messiah. So it's like all these holes. But yeah,
it's like Billy Joel. Like, when he dies, 100 years later, people are going to say he was actually a good musician, even if he was really, really good.
Well, it's Well, it's funny because Joe Rogan talks about how, like, a lot of people believe that shit because it's old. Because they're like, if somebody went around now saying, I'm the son of God, like, oh, follow me, you'd be like, who the fuck is this lunatic? But because it's old and it happened a long time ago, it's like we're more susceptible to believe in it. And that's all it really is. Because if that shit happened today, we wouldn't believe it. It seemed silly.
Well, yeah, we would, because look at the people that run these cults, in Jonestown, and all that stuff. There are people that will believe that stupid shit. The Christians all believe in that stupid shit. If you believe that there is a God now, then you probably would have fallen for anything, you know, and you probably still will. People come along that think that they're Jesus. There's always 100 people that believe in that they are. It's not hard to convince people of anything, except for that there isn't religion. You know, that seems to be a hard one to convince them of.
Yeah.
I think that they should be forced to watch Religulous with Omar to make up their mind about religion. I think they should be forced to watch that in schools, so that it brings everything in perspective. You know, let the Christians make one video and let us make another, and show that in school and let them decide.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one's backed by science and the other one's backed by, you know, faith. And that's the thing, you know, when basically you can end every, you know, debate by saying, yeah, you just have to have faith. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, if like you said before, like if there's a hurricane that goes through your town and you survive, it's because God was looking after you. But your neighbors who die, you know, it's like, well, what happened to them? You know, like, so now they're picking and choosing who lives and who dies. I mean, there's plenty of bad people that have good things happen to them, and plenty of good people that bad things happen to, you know. So
if one guy spent the rest of his whole life doing great deeds for somebody and helping out everybody, but he wasn't religious, and then there's another guy who killed people and then asked for forgiveness and or just was miserable human their whole life, if he gets into heaven over the guy that's helped everybody all their life, you don't even want to be there. You know, it's like, why would you even want to be in that kind of heaven? I would rather be where the nice people are than the Christians that just think that they can ask for forgiveness and no matter what they do, you know, it's just ridiculous. It's a bad theory that God would be, if there was a God, that he would be like that you would even want to hang out with this God if he was, you know.
Oh, I completely agree. I have a buddy who's a born again Christian, and we get in this debate all the time. I'm like, listen, so you're telling me that if I do everything right, and I'm like, I live my life as morally right as I can, and I'm a morally good person, but just because I don't consider Jesus my Lord and Savior, I'm like, I'm not going to heaven. But yet a rapist or murderer or whatever can do everything wrong, but the last second before he dies, he says, no, I consider Jesus my Savior. All of a sudden he makes it to heaven. I'm like, what type of fucked up world are you going to go to in this afterlife? I'm like, this seems, you know, I'm like, that makes sense to you? You know, it just does, like you said,
Jesus' form of recruiting is really fucked.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point. Now, do you think that maybe one of the reasons why religion has become so popular, or was at one time, was because of the fear of death? You think it makes it easier to cope with it, hoping, I mean, obviously it does, right? You know, just the idea that
it's very convenient, it's comforting to people. I wish that Christians had something that was nice and cushy like that when you die, but the reality of just being in a box and rotting away is not appealing to anybody. Atheists, you know, that doesn't appeal to me at all. I wish there was a God and something cushy, but yeah, I think it helps people at the end. It does do good in that fact that it helps people, it comforts them from the fear of death. That's the only positive thing I can see happening from it, you know. And I don't know. There's nothing that anybody could tell an atheist that would make him feel that good when he's dying. And that's the bad part about being an atheist, you know?
Yeah, I think the idea of just, you know, passing away and nothing happening is a scary thought, and I think that, you know, I think that's why some people turn to religion or whatever. But, you know, I'm kind of like you, where I don't let that you know, me being afraid of that really being the end of the road change what I think is a logical, you know, perspective on, is there this guy in the air that decides that, hey, if you like me, you go to heaven. If you don't, then it doesn't matter what morally you did wrong or right, you know. So I think it's a scary thought. So you know,
then you get these atheists who have this fake science who convince themselves they become part of this energy, and you're always alive, that your energy travels to another, you know, and then they try to sound scientific about that. That's their cushy thing, but I don't believe in that either. I believe in that when it's done, it's done. You don't have any energy that leaves your body and joins another part of another energy mass. It doesn't matter if it did, you're not conscious during it. So that's no comfort at all, but they try to get comfort from that too.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because a lot of people who do psychedelics like yourself, they do like that changes a lot of atheists who do psychedelics. They a lot of them do believe that there's something more after. It might not be a religious thing where there's this guy in the air, but like you said, that theory of they feel like there's something to our consciousness and that we might we're just made up of energy that might go somewhere else and stuff like that. You didn't get like anything like that doing all the psychedelics?
I got that part of that. When I did mushrooms, there was something that made me see the pattern in something. When you're looking at, you see the workings of a piece of fabric, you know, the weave and all of it. Yeah, you see all kinds of weird stuff, and you should learn from that. But yeah, I got that a little bit from it. But I mean, so what if there is that? It doesn't mean that your thoughts and are encapsulated with whatever you do turn into. You lose all that. You lose all your memories of your. I'm guessing that's what happens. That you lose. Even if that happens, you're not yourself anymore. Maybe you fertilize a bush better than it would have been fertilized. Yeah, that's. I guess you had a part of that, sure. But ask that bush the name of my parents and the fun we had at the lake. You know, it won't tell you. So it's not like. So what if it does happen?
Yeah.
I think you got to consider the end and try to make what you're doing count, because that's all you got. So that's another reason to really get out there and do what you want to do and make the most out of your life, because once it's over, you know.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think that's important. That's an important point too, because I think that a lot of people, you know, you hear a lot of atheists say that, like, you know, religious people, they live for the afterlife instead of living for this life, and it's like you live your whole life in preparation for, you know, trying to make your way into heaven by doing, you know, following these certain rules and laws and going, you know, spending so much of your life that you could be spending doing things that make you happy, praying to some magical person and this and that, and spending all this time and money at a church instead of doing the things that really make you happy, hoping that it all pays off in the end. And, you know, so it's just like, I think that that's a good point, that we should be focused on what we do know, and that's we're here now and take advantage of it.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. I love Penn Teller. Penn's a real big atheist, Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller, and he's really smart. He's like the smartest guy I know. But he had Christopher Hitchens over to his house one time, and he's telling me the story about, you know, how Penn doesn't allow alcohol in his house. He's anti-alcohol. He hates it. And Hitchens came over to watch a movie, and he had a bottle of Jack Daniels in his hand, and he got out of the cab and he was drunk, and Penn said, you know, you can't come in here with that bottle. And this is like, you're talking to Chris Hitchens here, you know, the fact that he's even at your house. So he said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop me? And Penn thought about it, and he said, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I will try stopping you. And Hitchens thought about it. Okay, no, he doesn't want to fight over it. And he set the bottle down, and he came in and watched the movie, and then immediately left to get his bottle. But I love that story about that. Chris Hitchens, what a great guy, man. You know, everybody should be forced to watch him for at least an hour.
Oh yeah, no, the crazy thing is that he was he's smart. I almost said he's more smart, like a retard, but he's smarter than most people. He's smarter buzzed than most people are sober. I mean, this guy, I would hear him debate people, and you could tell he had a little buzz going. And I'm like, he's ripping this guy to shreds, and I'm like, I'm sure he's been drinking, you know.
Yeah, he knows. I think that he knows what was going on in the world, and then he can explain it to cut through the bullshit to these people who are religious, and they know all their really strong arguments that work for them, and they get that shredded right in the first minute. All their ammunition's taken away in the first minute. Then they got another 40 minutes of interview to go with, a debate to go with Chris, and I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want to be in those shoes.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh yeah, I mean, some people are just good at debating and they don't necessarily make good points. But Chris was good at both. He was good at debating and he made amazing points. And I think that he was a good spokesperson for the atheist movement because he was well spoken. He wasn't, you know, him and same thing with Richard Dawkins. You know, same thing, like a well spoken guy who's very logical. You know, and I think
he's the opposite temperament. He's nice and calm, and he doesn't offend people. He's kind of worried about offending people. And he has all the knowledge, and he tries to give it to him without offending him. Chris never was like that. He just, you know, here it is, motherfucker. You know, This is. I watched Dawkins speak live last month. He came to Vegas and talked, and I got to listen to him talk. And he watched his new movie and stuff, and it's amazing, just amazing. What minds on these people, you know? But to be the first to be the first ones on this new movement. I think they'll make history to be the first ones to be anti-religious and go out there and to speak. They'll be talking about those two guys years and years after they're dead, like they're the antichrist, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, yeah, because they paved the way for like Sam Harris and some of these other younger atheists, and I think that I think you're right. I mean, before they came out publicly, it was kind of a taboo to say that you're an atheist. You know, it's like people, you know, you almost didn't want to tell people because they're like, wait, what? Like you're saying you don't believe in anything? You know, it's like you're almost better off being a Mormon or a Scientologist than being atheist.
Right, and even when you say you were agnostic, just to take take the danger away from it, people would always say, there's more people that just go with atheist now than agnostic. I think that agnostic it's too safe. It's too safe. It's like being lazy. It's not. It's a lot like not doing what you want to do for a living. Something you want to do.
Yeah,
so that's lazy. And so is being agnostic and just saying, oh, I don't know. I actually. The one thing about agnostic is I don't think about religion anymore, or if there is one or not. I really don't want to. I don't want to think about it. I think that not thinking about it, that's close to agnostic. But if somebody asks, I'll tell them, yeah, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in it. That's my belief. But I don't try to think about it because I don't know. I'm not saying anything's for sure, but I'll bet you it's not God. I bet you it's not this old guy in the sky that the Christians are touting.
Yeah.
It's not him for sure because everybody's touting a different religion, and it just depends where you were brought up. If where you grew up, that's that's what religion you are. You're assigned to that. If you're in India, you're Muslim and Hindu or whatever. You're assigned to it from where you were born. So.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If you grew up in the Middle East, then you would be Muslim, or if you were raised Jewish, you'd be Jewish, and you could be the exact same person could be raised somewhere else and grow up absolutely believing whatever they were raised to believe, and have no doubts that what they believe is for sure 100%. And it was all dictated by, like you said, you just happen to be raised in a family that happened to be
Yeah.
So yeah, I think culture.
It's kind of pompous to think that your religion is, and if you take a look at a globe and you think that this little spot is your religion and the rest of the world is this religion, to think that you're the only one who's going to make it into heaven is kind of pompous, and that the rest of the world is wrong and you got the right way, because of what your parents taught you. Yeah, you're pretty much an asshole if you think that,
Well, like you said, I think a lot of people are religious just because their parents taught them. I mean, how many people have tattoos, but in the Bible, it's or religious tattoos in the Bible, it tells you not to mark your body, So just like, it's almost like you just do it just because, like you said, you're raised that way. You don't really put much thought into it. But the agnostic thing was, was interesting because I know a lot of people who are afraid to say they're atheists, so they will say agnostic because they don't get looked down upon as much, So
yeah, you get a choice. You get a chance of getting in heaven if you say that.
Yeah, you're not. So you're not saying you don't believe, but people actually put atheists like they're extremists and like they're a religion. They're like, oh well, you believe in this.
Yeah, they are extremists because you have to do that at first. I think because you're not giving kids a fair advantage of not believing in God. That's why the atheists have to be that way, because they have to preach their side so that it's known. If you keep your mouth shut about it, nobody's going to think about it. Nobody's going to think, hey, maybe you're right, there isn't a God. I never thought about it that way. So you got to kind of be preachy a little bit, like the people who are Christian. But you're not preaching. You're preaching for people to think on their own is what you're preaching. That's not what Christians are preaching, I don't think. They're preaching, you do it my way or the highway. And atheists are preaching, think for yourself,
Oh, yeah.
which is more safe, I think, more practical.
Well, Christians are preaching with scaring you to hell. I mean, they tell you that if you don't listen, if you're wrong, you're going to fucking hell. And if you listen to me, you can make it to heaven. So, I mean, I think that's, like you said, they're almost so loud and so aggressive that to even things out, you almost have to be equally as loud and as aggressive. So that makes sense.
But you're not preaching that there isn't a God. You're preaching that think about it. Think about the scientific facts here. Then make up your mind.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. To preach that sounds like it's something worthy to preach. Other than the other thing,
Yeah, definitely. Well, John,
yeah. God be with you, man. Thanks for the Godspeed. Godspeed.
Hey, I really appreciate your time, John. This was awesome to be able to that's the cool thing about starting this podcast is I get to reach out to people I'm a fan of, and and basically sit down and get to know them and talk to them. So this is definitely not my full-time job, but I put a lot of effort in this, and because I think it's important to do what you enjoy and do what you love.
Well, it could be your full-time job if you do it right, and it looks like you're doing it right. I'm one of your guests, so I say you're on the track.
Thanks. So
I see what Mark Maron's got, and I'm going like, yeah, this is the way to go, man. Podcast is. He does it out of his garage. He doesn't have to go anywhere. He goes from his house to his garage, and that's the extent of it, if he wants. And like I was leaving, and ZZ Top were coming in and pulling up in his driveway. What a great way. Podcasts are cool, man. You could make it doing this.
Oh yeah, I definitely think they're the future of media. I think that it's uncensored. I mean, I think that guys like Opie and Anthony, they paved the way for podcasts, like them and Howard Stern, because they did the uncensored, raunchy, uncensored type thing, and it's like, I'm gonna be who I am. I'm gonna do what I want, and I don't like this, anybody dictating and putting guidelines. And the nice thing about podcasts is that, one, they're out there for, anybody could start one with very little equipment, and two, you kind of have the guidelines to do whatever you want. It's like I choose not to have sponsors. I choose to be uncensored, and if somebody wants to swear, if I want to swear, then whatever. And I think that's what people like about it. If people want to get commercials, if people want to get censored Q&A type conversations, they can get that anywhere. So I think
the people behind Opie and Anthony firing Anthony.
That's fucked up.
What jackasses they are, man. They just didn't get it, did they?
No, I don't get it. I don't understand how they basically made, like, they got loaded, made money off this guy's personality and his sense of humor, and then they fire him for the same thing.
Yeah, and then fire him for being right, for doing what he should have done. Yeah. And that is to tell that black lady, you're a fucking animal, and yeah. telling black people, who are helping her out, yeah, you're animals too. Whether or not they were black, that's no consequence on the situation. They were animals, and he fucking called them animals, and he called it for what even if he didn't like black people. That's his priority. There's a lot of people that don't like black people, that they shouldn't be losing their jobs. They shouldn't be having their basketball teams taken away from them. They shouldn't be any of that.
Yeah.
Don't like the guy. If you don't like him because the way he believes, don't like him. But you can't take his job away because of it, or persecute him for it.
Oh, I kind of, and you brought up the Donald Sterling thing. That's the same thing. I mean, I'm like, wait, so you taped a guy in the privacy of his own home, and basically, I think he was getting taped because he had a hard time remembering shit, and you taped in the privacy of his own home, and really, that's the worst thing that he said. I'm like, holy fuck, man! If you tape most people in the privacy of their own home with their friends and not thinking that the conversation is going to be public, like, you would hear a lot fucking worse. I remember when they first started talking about that tape, I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be real bad. And I listened, I'm like, wait, well, I don't get it. Okay, yeah, he's an old dude who was born in the fucking early 1900s. Yeah, he might say a little racist things, but
Listen, Michael Richards, when he said the word nigger he was justified in saying the word. If someone's ruining your job and you're trying to do your show and they're wrecking and hooting and hollering, then he was a nigger. That's what he was at that time. If it was a white guy heckling a black guy, you wouldn't heard anything about it. If the white guy was called a cracker or whatever derogatory term you use for that guy, you wouldn't hear anything about it. You'd say, yeah, he had it coming.
Well,
but Michael Richards just wasn't clever enough in using the word. If you're going to use that word, you got the ability to be clever with it so that it makes a point, doesn't just shock people. I don't care if I shock people or not. That's the thing. People are apologizing for things they should not be apologizing for, and the politically correct they're using it for ammunition now to get their ways.
Yeah, and I think that I do think that the N-word definitely has some history to it, and I think that
depends how you use it. It depends how it's used.
Yeah,
black people can use it, so it's any one word should not be so powerful. Well, what I mean? We put the power in words. It's not the word. It's the anger behind the word. It's not the word. If you go, hey, what's up, nigga? That's not bad. That's not bad at all. It's just a word. then it has. But if you're using it in hate or any word, if you would have called them a motherfucker in hatred, I don't know. I don't get it. It's just people are too thin-skinned about shit. I mean, and people shouldn't apologize for it anymore. I know that I was called to apologize for saying Michael Richards was correct. The newspaper got wind of it, and they wrote a story that I was racist, and that the Sahara where I was working wanted me to apologize for it. And I said, I'll apologize for it when Chinese people learn how to drive, and when black people stop talking in movie theaters, and when Jews aren't so cheap. That's what I said. And after saying that, nobody wanted to even hear what I had to say after that. They left me alone. Nobody wanted a quote from me, you know?
Yeah.
And the point is, I'm a comic. What are you listening to? That's really loud over there, baby. Hello? Anna?
What?
Your speakerphone's on or something. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think that a comic saying anything should be put in the press. I mean, you're a comic.
Well, that's...
And
the thing is, too, Opie and Anthony are good friends with Patrice O'Neal, who, you know, I mean, so it's not like he didn't have black friends. I mean, it's one of those things where I definitely, and I forget which comedian said, if you stop getting mad when people would say the word nigger, then you'll take the power away from the word, and basically, you know, your reaction to it is what's giving strength to that word, you know?
Yeah, what word do they have to call us that would cause so much stir, so much controversy? What word do they have, or any race, what word do they have to call a white person that's going to be offensive? And they're not walking the line. They don't have to watch what they say, you know?
Yeah, well, there's definitely not the history behind it, but I do think that racism, racism is always, we always look at it as from white people to black people. And I like that it's an older movie, Crash, and it was a great movie where it kind of showed how everybody's a little racist. You had Middle Eastern people that were mad at people not, you know, being racist towards them, but then they were racist towards Puerto Ricans or blacks in their stores, and you know, Puerto Ricans were mad because people were racist against them, but they were also racist towards white people. So it's like one of those things where, like, you know, we still are tribal creatures, and we do pick teams, and then, you know, I think that it's one of those things where you relate to a certain type of person, and then you know, and then you always think that you're being discriminated against, but sometimes we are all maybe doing a little bit of discrimination without even knowing it, you know? And
yeah, well, I mean, if there's a race of people that are shooting other people in higher numbers, no matter what the race is, if they're killing people in higher numbers and taking people's lives away from them, then they should be called what they are. You know, they should be. Unless you prove, you got to live up to what you are on this planet. You know, live up to it. If you're getting a bad reputation, most likely, if you're getting a stereotype about yourself, then chances are, guess what? That's you, and then your race is doing that more than anyone else.
Yeah.
So until you, you know, raise the bar on it, that's what you are.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree. I think that stereotypes don't come out of you know, thin air. There's, you know, usually a lot of the stereotypes, there's some truth to it. I mean, like you said, if you say, hey, Jews are cheap, it's not because there's never been a cheap Jew, and it's completely over the top and not, you know, not real. Right? So it's just, I think that, and I think there's a difference between, like, if I say I'm Portuguese or whatever, if there's something, say, hey, Portuguese all drink a lot, that's just the truth. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a race or whatever. Like, that just happens to be true. I mean, to be offended by it.
The word all is not what you want to use, though. Yeah. That's where you get into trouble. You say the majority of, or a higher percentage of Portuguese drink. Well, that's not all of Portuguese drink. That was a bad.
Well, we do all drink, so there's some truth to that. But yeah, no, I definitely, no, I agree, and I think that there's definitely, I mean, I think we are a little too politically correct, and I think that the political correction police, I think some people actually get something out of pointing the finger and telling people, oh, you're insensitive, or you're this, you're that. And I remember that video of Patrice O'Neal on Fox News talking about, I forgot what he was talking about, rape jokes, I think, or rape culture or something like that, and some you know, soccer mom was on Fox News with them, and she's like, when is a rape joke ever funny? He's like, if you laugh, it's funny. He's like, you know, it's like, I'm trying to make, and he made a good point, because it's like, if people laugh, then all of a sudden it's not racist, but if nobody laughs, then all of a sudden it's a racist comment, you know? So it's just
I can think of a half dozen rape jokes that I think are very, very, very funny, right off the top of my head.
Daniel Tosh got in. I think Daniel Tosh got in trouble for that too. Like talking about, and I'm like, dude, he's a fucking comedian. I'm like, if you don't go to a comedy show you go see Richard Dawkins if you want a well-spoken, logical person. I'm like, if you go see Daniel Tosh, you're gonna see a lot of sarcasm and comedy. That's what you pay to see. So just like to think that a comedian should be politically correct is insane. And I think I'll tell you, comedians are ballsy because there are a lot of comedians that I like the fact that you go on stage, you'll say a Puerto Rican joke or a black joke or whatever, and I always wonder, I'm like, as much as we want to believe when we're on stage we would have the balls to do it, because we in the back of your head you're like, am I offending somebody? Do you ever hear comedians talk about that,
I live for somebody coming up to me and telling me, trying to straighten me out on the political correct. I can't wait to do that. I live for people doing that. Woe is the person who comes up to me and tells me, you're being rude. Or I'll put them in their place in a second. That was my whole mission towards the end of my career, was to do that in my show, to piss off people. When I do the Stevie Wonder joke, and I tell, why can't Stevie Wonder read? Because he's black. And I make the guy like the guy on stage told the joke, and he gets the blame for it. I love that kind of stuff. Shocking people is half the fun of being a comic, and I think that we're going to be the last ones on this planet to be able to do it before it's taken away completely.
Yeah.
Certainly politicians can't do it.
No. Well, yeah, and that's what I love about comedy, because I think a lot of times we're laughing because there's so much truth to it, because they're saying things that maybe we think that we don't have the balls to say, and I think that's why we laugh.
Yeah, or that it's so ridiculous that it's funny, because of course that's not going to happen. The situation I'm saying is going to happen. Of course, you should know that just by being a human, that's not the way I really think. But that's the whole funny part, is that I'm twisting it around to be like, rapists are funny, or child molesting jokes can be funny. I mean, it's not serious. It's not the news. It's not the nightly news. It's a joke.
Yeah, that's why I grew up. I loved like the East Coast comedy, like the Jeff Rosses and Nick DiPaolos and Greg Giraldos, because those guys were just like, they just didn't give a fuck, and like like Jim Norton, another one who's like super honest, and like he'll talk about prostitutes or whatever, and it's just like I love the honesty. I love they don't give a shit about being politically correct. They'll just
That's right.
Yeah, and.
Yeah. You got to watch my podcast, man. You got to watch Burn Unit. It's probably the most politically incorrect podcast on the internet.
And that's once a week?
I got to plug this. Yeah, go to burnunit.tv, and that's where you can see me. And that's where, from now on, if you want to see anything by me, that's where it is. And a new written blog, which I'm going to start tomorrow, telling lurid drug tales, which you'll like. Every day I'm going to come up with something that happened to me in the 30 years and put that out there, since I have nothing to lose now. So yeah, I'm going to do that. But watch Burn Unit. It's very politically incorrect.
Yeah.
It's what a talk show could be if you didn't care about using the word nigger or chink or kite or whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes. Well, we know you were on Letterman, and then you also got banned from Letterman, so you know how politically correct. Yeah.
Well, his political. Yeah, he banned me because he was taking the big high stance, that his violence towards women stance that he took. I stabbed a girl in the head with a pair of scissors during the show, which is a joke, and people know it's not real, and yet he couldn't show that episode. He told me that he wouldn't air the episode, and to go back out and do another set. I didn't have any other equipment to do another set, but I tried. I went out there and did it. But that's why he told me that slapstick was basically putting a ban on slapstick, and I told him that he's wrong. I actually, to his face, I stood there to Letterman's face, and I said, you know what, Dave, you're wrong. I said, you're setting a dangerous precedent here. It's a joke. It's just a routine. If it was a guy I was stabbing, or an old man, you wouldn't care. But because it's a woman, ooh, you're high and mighty. You have this stance against violence towards women. Well, it's not violence towards women. It's a joke against a woman, is what it is.
Yeah, and isn't that what makes it funny? The fact that it's so over the top.
Not to him.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely check out. I'm gonna what I do on my obviously you can get this podcast everywhere you can get podcasts, on iTunes or whatever. But I also put a video episode on YouTube, and underneath that video episode in the show descriptions, I'll have links to the Amazing Johnathan's Facebook page, his podcast, and all that stuff. So if you want to check out his podcast, I actually did check out a couple episodes. I did notice that you're doing it once a week, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, we've already done about 40 of them. So
yeah,
they're up there.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's good to keep busy. And it's good to keep busy and keep keep doing stuff. And I'm sure I saw that you're doing some of your card tricks and you're doing so you get to still do some of your acts and have fun and
putting together a lecture. That's what I'll be doing now. I'm not making any cash. I'm not having any cash come in. That's kind of scary. But luckily I saved a lot of money. But I mean it's weird not having money coming in like you used to have it coming in. And yeah, so I'm going to put together. I'm going to Denmark for my first one. They're flying me out there. It's going to be a free vacation for us, a honeymoon that we didn't get to take. And yeah, I'm going to put together a lecture and talk about comedy and why it's funny and try to make it valuable, to some people who want to learn. So, but it's good talking with you, man. It's great. Did we go over a half hour?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks. I really appreciate it, man. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with me. And I know that a lot of people who come on the show sometimes I really from bottom of my heart I'm not trying to suck up to anybody, but I really appreciate all the guests that come on because it's just like it's the only way I get to talk to people I'm a huge fan of, and the cool thing is people always say growing up like don't meet your heroes or people you're a fan of because they're gonna disappoint you, but I've been pretty lucky that all the film. What's that?
Who have you had on the show? What's the big names you've had on the show that you've?
I've had I'm a big documentary guy, so I've had comedians. I've had Lee Camp. He's you know who Lee Camp is? No, he's kind of he's people compare him to Bill Hicks, kind of like that type of political style.
Really, I'll look him up. I want to hear.
Yeah. He has a show now on RT, which is kind of similar to like a Daily Show type thing, like a satire comedy news show. And super smart guy. He was a part of the Zeitgeist movement and did some stuff with that. And but then I've had a lot of filmmakers. I've had and authors. Like I had Roger Stone on, who was a political consultant for Reagan and Nixon and wrote the book The Man Who Killed Kennedy: The Case Against LBJ. I had just recently I had this guy Gerard Williams on who wrote the book Grey Wolf: The Escape by Adolf Hitler, and he worked for BBC and worked for a bunch of people. And then I had some musicians on. I've had so I try to mix it up, get a little bit of like I said, all the art forms that I enjoy, like comedy, movies, and music. I try to get a little bit of everything, and that way I think it keeps the podcast interesting. And but also I think that they should all be appreciated, and I like to lump them in together because I think a lot of people don't lump them in all together. They don't see it comedy and music and filmmaking all art, and I do, and I think they really are all art and should be appreciated because I think they're all a vital part to our lives. I know they're all a vital part to my life. I love music and I love comedy. I think that we need things to relate to, but we also need to laugh and remember that life's too short to be depressed all the time. So I think that we do need all those things. And I'm trying to think more guests, but obviously I'm having a brain fart right now on the spot. But
you gotta lose the white bed sheets behind you. Just put up a logo or something. That's your name or something.
I do need to do something.
You know what?
With that.
Yeah, because you're good at podcasting and you got a future in it, but the bed sheet's got to go. But I was telling, here's a little hint from people didn't know who I was until I put my name behind me on a set one set. I did a Comedy Central special and someone said, you know what? Put your name on something behind you so that it's in their brain. So when I did that, people stopped saying, hey, you're that guy, and started saying, hey, you're the Amazing Johnathan. That was the difference. I can pin it to that one moment. When people switched around, and that's the moment. So just a little advice, put your name on something behind you so people know who they remember it. Yeah, even though it's not a podcast, people can watch this, right?
Yeah. What I do is because I figured that the more places you can run into it, the better. So most podcasts, like a lot of comedians have podcasts and stuff. You get them on usually on iTunes or your phone. All phones have podcast apps now, so now it's convenient. Yeah. You can listen to it in your car, listen to it wherever. And but what I try to do too is I try to put a video episode on YouTube because I think a lot of times people like to see who's talking. They like to put a face to the to the name. So I figured that's one more way of people hopefully running into it, and so I figured
put a name to your face behind you.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good idea because
you just take a can of spray paint and paint those white sheets.
Yeah, you know what? That's probably a really simple tip that could probably make a huge difference.
It is. It does.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, man.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate it, man. I appreciate your time, and hopefully, good luck with everything. Good luck with all your future projects, and keep busy, man.
All right, Rick. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks. Hey, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Awesome episode with Amazing Johnathan. I'm very appreciative of the fact that he took time out of what it sounds like he doesn't have many more years left, and that sounds pretty certain. And for him to take time out of his day to be with me, and I don't know how many interviews he's doing these next couple years, and so just to be one of the few interviews that he has done and will do is just, I really appreciate it. And I've been a huge fan of his for a long time, and I hope nobody gets lost in some of the conversations we talked about and some of the things we agreed on and disagreed on and stuff like that. I think that I think the point of a lot of the topics we talked about when we were talking about being politically correct and all that stuff is the fact that I think it's a slippery slope of trying to censor people, and when does it stop? And I think our purchasing power is very much underrated, and I think that if you want to make a point, if you want to say, hey, I don't like what this person says, I don't like this guy's sense of humor, I don't like his work or whatever, then don't listen to it, then don't buy it, don't watch it, and that's your way of making your point and getting your point across. So I think that's a way better way than trying to censor everybody, because almost everything somebody says offends somebody, and then it's just an endless downward spiral of trying to censor people to try to keep everybody happy, which is it's gonna be a goal that's never gonna be accomplished. So I just think that really that's what we were talking about. I mean, obviously there's certain words that have some history to it and all that stuff, but I think the point was that you can't just keep censoring everybody, and you can't, and let's be honest, most of these people who do censor people, how much of it is for political gain or to be politically correct themselves and look good in the public eye, and how much of them deep inside really are? I mean, look at the Sterling thing like we briefly talked about, and I'm sure people are probably sick of hearing about it, but all the other owners that like jumped on board and like turn against Sterling, not turn against, but basically said, hey, yeah, we want this guy out. How many of them are friends with him? How many of them probably, if they were recorded, would have said something way worse? So now how much of it was for the for the PR of it, and it wasn't for anything else? So I'm not saying that there aren't good owners, but what I'm saying is there's a lot of people who are just as bad, but they like to point the fingers. They like to judge others before judging themselves. So I just think that that in that conversation we're talking about, I just hope people don't get lost in what we're trying to say. So I got some episodes coming up, some guests that I just having a hard time booking because with their busy schedule, and just right now with my full-time job schedule, it's just been kind of crazy. So I'm hoping to get some more shows out to you, at least a couple a month, maybe 2 or 3 a month would be ideal, would be awesome, and I'd really like to do that. It just time's kind of limited right now, and but once the winter comes and work slows down, just like last winter, and I put out a bunch of shows and I had a lot more time to book people, so I'm definitely look forward to that, and definitely keep checking up on the podcast because I will be continuously putting out shows, and I know Ben McLeish is supposed to be back on soon, and I'm gonna book Guy Evans and Daniele Bagnelli, and Jack Abramoff from Casino Jack already said he'd be on. So we're just all these people, we just got to figure out schedules. The singer Enta Shikari, which a lot of people have heard me talk a lot about on the show, he's going to be on, I believe, in September. So we got tons of really good guests. It's just when can we get them on, and when can we find time to do it? So definitely thanks for the support. Thanks for everybody who's been listening. Thanks for everybody who lets me stutter and appreciates the fact that I'm a real person who's not a perfect public speaker, and I'm just a average day guy who just likes to have these conversations and then poke at people's brains and let people poke at mine, and be open-minded to different ideas and opinions and perspectives. So I really appreciate everybody who accepts my flaws and still supports the show. Just like at the end of this show when Amazing Johnathan said, oh, who have you had on the show? And I feel like such an asshole because I'm just like, all of a sudden I have a brain fart, and I'm like, and I'm like, obviously I had Dan Carlin on, Adam Scorgi, who did the Culture High, and that's coming out, and Dr. Brzezinski, and Dr. Gregory A. Smith. So I've had, and Mike Adams from Natural News. So I've had a lot of guests that I'm a real big fan of, and obviously James Corbett. So I mean, I don't know if you would know a lot of those people. Maybe he would, and but I would. To me personally, those are big, big stars in my eyes, because those are people who I love their work and I love what they've done and what they're doing. So, but I think that's it for now. So enjoy the show. I'm definitely going to put another Theory 6 song out. Last time on the Ben McLeish episode, I ended up putting a song called Let Go, or which I ended up retitling War for Peace, which is an awesome song that I've been just working on and rearranging because I just feel like there's so much potential in it. At the end of the Bennett McLeish episode, you can hear it. I was going to release it soon, but then I kept tweaking it, and then I didn't have time to finally put it out and do everything. So, but it's really close to being done. It's just about 100% done, and so I plan on releasing it soon, and then hopefully it'll be on iTunes and Google Play and all those places where people can download. So hopefully when you guys see me release that, if you're following me on Twitter, Facebook, and all that stuff, hopefully you guys retweet it, share it, and all that stuff, and I'd really, really appreciate it if the song got out there, because I think it there's a lot of important samples and speeches and stuff like that I sample on the show that I would really appreciate to get out there, and you know, people supporting music they like and music with a meaning. So thanks again, guys, from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate everybody who's listening and everybody who takes time out of their day to listen. Hopefully this gives you something to listen to while you go to your full-time job and you're you know, you have to deal with everyday life like the rest of us, and you know, just helps us get through where you can throw on your earbuds or download an app and listen to it in your car or wherever. And for a little bit, you forget about, you know, bills and work and all that stuff, and you get to, you know, consume some information and listen to some people's different perspectives and stuff like that, and hopefully take something from it. Because I know I'm definitely learning from this whole experience, and that's definitely one of the reasons I'm enjoying this the most. Also, my co-host, who hasn't been on a show in a really long time, hopefully I'm expecting to have him back soon. And once he's back and he's going to be doing shows, hopefully, you know, I'm hoping to at least have him on once a month. We'll be having those conversations again. I know there's a lot of people who enjoy those. So, and I also enjoy him because he's obviously one of my best friends, and we just really feed off each other and are both very open-minded but different. So it makes for good conversation. So hopefully Dave will be back soon. So he's in Hawaii right now, so I hope he doesn't get hit with those hurricanes. And but anyway, so stay safe, Dave, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks again, guys. Peace.
Believe in the ripple effect.